So, like I said, you guys are raring to go. I can feel it. So, let's officially kick off our Maxilife Maxicare Well-Being Series. Welcome to Maxilife, a Maxicare well-being webinar series featuring money matters, smart passive income strategies, and the importance of financial wellness to overall health. Again, I'm Patricia Bermudez-Hizon, your host and your moderator for this afternoon. In today's session, we will discuss the money-related stressors, as well as the wise financial decisions that are essential in our overall well-being, just like exercise and good nutrition, right? Today, you will learn tips and insights about personal finance and how to work towards your financial goals. You'll also discover ways to make money work for you through building several streams of passive income and the common habits of financially successful people and their secrets to building a healthy relationship with money. I am as excited as you are to meet our speaker. You know, our speaker is really a change maker. After 10 years in the corporate world across firms like Ayala Land Incorporated and Del Monte Philippines, he became an entrepreneur and TV media personality to pursue a passion. Armed with a business management degree from Ateneo, a certificate of advanced education leadership from Harvard, and a master's degree in innovation and entrepreneurship from HEC Paris, he has focused on innovative education, personal finance, and family values. He is the chairman of Homeschool Global Learning Incorporated and lead anchor and writer of Fundamentals on Plus Network. He's also a former lead anchor and writer for ABS-CBN's news channel, and it is an award-winning show on personal finance called On the Money. He has helped individuals develop positive financial decisions, and his passion is to change the world one family at a time. So let us welcome registered financial planner, Edric Mendoza.
Hello, everybody. It is a privilege to be with you here again. Thank you, Patricia, for that very generous introduction. I love, of course, the last line, which is something that I know you're passionate about, and the team here is passionate about, helping change the world a family at a time. So because of that word change, for those of you that have heard me speak, you know what I'm going to ask you to do. Everywhere I go, I want to engage people and start them off with this. Can you please say in our chat box, and if you're with someone right now, tell them, magbago ka na. Ayan, please go. Chat that in the box, magbago ka na. It's time for us to change. Ayan, thank you very much. What will we do? I'm going to clock myself. Magbago ka na. It's time for us to change. How will we change today? Ayan. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unpack some principles, as Patricia said earlier, on how we can connect financial wellness to overall wellness, right? And this is a deep passion of mine, talking about money and how this affects us. So I'm going to get started here. I hope you guys see my slides. And I'm going to share with you principles on how to be well. WELL. After I unpack that, we're done. And we're going to realize that, pagdating sa pera, really, it's not an overnight thing. And it has to really be brought about by some fundamental shifts. So if you're looking at this picture on the screen right now, this is the first shift I wanted to challenge you all with. What you're seeing on your screen is actually the British £2 coin. And it's my favorite coin of all existing coins and currency. I actually have one right here. If you're looking at my screen, ayan, no? And I love it, not because I think the UK and the Brits are cool, but I do think they're cool. But I like it because when you look at what's inscribed on it, I don't know if you can see it on my actual screen here. Yeah, no? You'll see it in the photo. And what does it say in the photo? It's pretty cool. The British £2 coin. Ano po nakasulat dyan? It is a quote from Sir Isaac Newton that says, if I've been able to see farther, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. Ang ganda. And when we look at life as a whole right now, wherever you guys are, if we're honest with ourselves, whatever we've been able to do better or achieve, really, my view and my experience has been that I've been able to do it only by standing on the shoulders of giants. Ang ibig sabihin po nun, there are people who have impacted me. There are people I have learned from. There are people who helped me out, and that's how I've been able to do what I'm able to do. And I say this because in this area of personal finance and money, I have met a lot of these giants, a lot of people who I've learned from, who have impacted me, who have transformed me. As Patricia shared, right, I've been the anchor of a show on ANC. I'm an anchor right now for this show on Plus Network. And as I met people across the Philippines and around the world, I have met amazing people who have completely changed the way that I viewed money and the way that I handle it now. And, I can mention names. I've met the former Philippine president. I've met tycoons. I've met this guy that was the youngest under 30, top 5 richest out of the UK. And I actually had a call with him just earlier. Amazing story. I meet these people and I get impacted. And I realize not everybody will have the opportunity to experience and meet people like that because it's unique. I happen to be in personal finance. I met people like that. But the more important question for us is, who are the giants that we are choosing to now communicate with? Who are we choosing to learn from? The fact that you're here is a good sign because you're looking to Maxicare in this webinar series to be a giant in your life, to give you learnings and impact. I want to share with you the story of this one young lady who was my guest. She was probably the most unsuspecting. She was back then a very tiny girl with braces. And she had a big bodyguard. So I want you to imagine someone like one of the characters maybe in Despicable Me, those sisters with the braces, these really cute, big-eyed little girl. So she seemed like that to me. I'm like, who's this guest? Most of my guests are entrepreneurs, tycoons, various people who seem to be very seasoned in their craft as far as money is concerned. So she comes in, big bodyguard, and I'll never forget her story because when I started unpacking her story, at that time, she was telling me that she learned about money and investing, and she got very interested in the stock market at about 13 years old. So she made a call to back then the Ortigas Stock Exchange, and a random person answered the phone, and she said, I want to learn about stocks. Can you teach me? So that person became a giant to her. She learned about stock investing, and she was so interested in the world of investing that when she now pursued college, she applied for a college where she said, I want to be the next Donald Trump. Hindi pa presidente si Donald Trump no, but he was a very successful tycoon. So she wanted to go to the same school. So she applied to NYU. And as she got accepted to NYU, 2 weeks, if I remember her story correctly, before she flew out, sinabi niya sa parents niya, I'm not going to college. So the parents were shocked. They were trying to negotiate with her. Why? You're wasting your future. She said, I'm learning things. I've been applying about money. So just trust me. So they trusted her. Fast forward, she never went to college. She's now a guest on my show, 21 years old. She is the CEO of her own angel investing firm that has a portfolio of 9 digits in pesos. I want you to wrap your head around that. So I was shocked and I said, so tell me, how did you manage? I mean, you didn't go to college. Did you have friends? Did you enjoy and relate to other people? And I remember what she said, and this is the paraphrase of her response already. She said, of course, I had friends and I hung out with peers, even if I didn't go to college. But one thing that I did that really helped me is I always surrounded myself with people who were better than me. I never forgot that. And that's why I'm sharing that with you all. The reality is the giants that we might happen to interact with, like in my case, will be different for each person, but we can choose who we will now surround ourselves with as giants, people who will influence the way we look at money, influence the way we learn money, because a large part of personal finance, as you've heard me share, if you haven't heard me say this, Dave Ramsey, one of the gurus in the US, says personal finance is 80% behavior, only 20% head knowledge and skill. So really, you want to ask yourself, who is it that you're surrounding yourself with so that it might influence the right behavior, even as you're building the thoughts, right? Who is it that can impact you in the right way? Baka naman, ang mga kasama mo are always down and discouraged, or always struggling. Everybody else is struggling in the area of finances, so it's not going to be helpful for you. So once again, as we open up this webinar on financial wellness and how this relates to our overall well-being, I want to encourage you. The first fundamental shift has to be in the area of who or what is influencing us in general right now. Who or what is influencing the way we deal with money or handle it right now? Who are we getting answers from? Who are we getting perspective from? I suggest, starting today, work on your giants. Can you chat that on the box with me right now? Work on your giants. So who is it? Sino ba? Who is influencing me? Who am I learning from? Please work on this, because those giants will impact and influence the way you handle money, if this is not obvious to you already. So important. Make sure you ask yourself, oh nga, no, who am I learning from? Who's impacting me? Who's influencing me? What am I feeding my mind and my body with right now? Because the reality is, if we're feeding ourselves with all this negative news, all of this confusion, right, then it's going to affect us. It's going to discourage us. It's going to prevent us from actually maybe even unpacking what we can achieve with our workspace and these other things that directly impact our finances. So that is the first, working on our giants. We're going to unpack three more. The other is establishing our personal economy. I put that in quotation marks for a reason. The third is looking after our health, and we'll look at why is that related to wealth and how those things come together. And then finally, we're going to look at this last idea of letting go. Wow, parang bigat. What does that mean, let go? Well, I want us to be well. Can you hashtag that in the chat box with me, guys? Be well. That's the main message, the main principle you want to come and leave with after this webinar that hopefully will change us. Be well. So W, work on your giants. So who are they? Do they need to be changed? Do you need to find sources? Do you need to feed yourself with better sources and really learn so that you can improve the way you handle money? W, always surround yourself with people who are better than you, as that young lady guest of mine said on our show. W, right? E, now I put this word personal economy, these words in quotation marks, because when we look at establishing our personal economy, most of us, when we look at money and the way things are, we're looking at maybe the bigger economy and how that's affecting things around us, right? Looking at the GDP growth and whether or not we will finally go back and become positive, as the forecasts say, right? Different analysts are saying that it might go maybe below the 6%, which we were hoping to achieve again for the year, maybe 5 or a little bit lower because of how the first quarter rolled out and the resurgence. So some of you maybe are impacted by that or concerned about that bigger picture economic metric. Some of you might be looking at the stock market and the index and are saying, "Naku, bumaba na naman sa 7,000, although it's coming back up and it's going to break. Are we going to be clear? How's that going to affect me? I'm invested there." Or some of you maybe are even looking at inflation or foreign exchange and all other indicators in the broader economy, and you're getting concerned. Well, I want to encourage you with a principle I've learned in many different areas of my life, to control what you can. So if you want to be well, even in the area of money, after you shift who it is you are getting influence from, or that's affecting the way you handle and deal or learn about money, the next is you want to say, what is the area that I can control? All of these other bigger economic facts, I can't really control that unless you are literally in MEDA, right? Or in any of these agencies that are directly impacted in analyzing and helping affect those things. But you can affect your personal economy. So what does that mean? When you look at personal economy, it's basically how you handle your finances. And as a financial planner, we have a very simple formula when it comes to money. Very simple po. Cash in, so what you make, less cash out, what you spend, must be greater than or equal to zero. If it is less than zero, you obviously know what that means. That's a problem. So let me help look at the personal economy first by looking at this. How can we make sure that this basic formula is something that is advantageous to us? So there's a lot to talk about here, and really this is a whole other seminar of its own. But the way that I want to frame it with you guys is to look at a few things. First, do we have a healthy budget? what is a healthy budget? Using this diagram or this formula, we want to ask ourselves, from whatever we make cash in, how do we now spend the money as we get it? So my suggestion is, if you get, let's say, to keep it very simple, let's say the total cash in for your family is 100,000 a month. My suggestion for a healthy budget is you will say, of the 100,000, spend 50,000 on your needs and 20,000 on your wants. Why? I'm a believer that, one of my guests who impacted me, another giant, said, and I believe his name is Efren Cruz, one of the fathers of personal finance. Ang sabi niya is, we don't want to live to pay the bills. If our main expense, majority of what we're spending for are needs, meaning things that we will die without, food, clothing, shelter, rent, utilities, loans. If that's more than the 50%, then we are living to pay our bills. So 50%, ideally, if you're not there yet, then maybe you have a total of 70, which includes the wants. Maybe that's what you're mainly spending on right now. 50 needs, 20 wants, which leaves you with 30%. Where do you spend the 30%? My suggestion, again, as a general health check for your finances, you want to spend 20% on your savings and investing for the future, for goals like education for your kids, or maybe a house someday, or a house renovation, or a big investment, or a new business, right? You want to set aside at least 20%, and you want to also have a giving fund. This is so important. And again, this is a whole other webinar all of its own. One of my favorite and most powerful life-changing financial learnings in my life is giving. So set that aside. Have a giving fund, at least 10%, savings 20%, so that when you now look at your total budget, let's say you make 100,000, you spend 70,000 on your expenses, needs, and wants, and then you have a 30,000 to now use for saving towards future goals and giving, right? And you can mix this around. Maybe some of you are different, obviously, in your starting point, but try and work towards this. It's never too late. I want you to say that in the chat box with me right now. It's never too late. Even in the area of health, right? I mean, if we feel like we're unhealthy, it's time to start now. The same with money. You want to get healthy in your finances, it's time to start now. Be well. So we're looking at our personal economy. We're now seeing, okay, do I have a healthy budget? This is one of the first ways to do it. The next thing, especially in times of crisis, where things are very unpredictable. And here's how I like to view crisis. I'll be very honest with you. I took a big hit, and many of us took a big hit in this pandemic, right? On various fronts, emotionally, physically, even financially, right? But when I started to really think hard about this pandemic, I realized that even after the pandemic subsides, we will continue to face crisis, all of us. It's a reality of life. So the challenge is not how to wait for it to end, but the challenge instead is how to make sure that we are prepared whatever crisis we might come up with, because there's always going to be something. And in the area of personal finance, what I want to encourage you guys with is using the same formula, cash in, less cash out. How do we ensure good liquidity? Right. So a few things I want to encourage you guys. You want to obviously try and boost the cash that you get in. So ensuring good liquidity means you basically have more cash that you can use, because in cases where things are unpredictable, you will need that, whether it's for your business, for your job, for your family, for your health. So how do we get more sources of income? I would suggest a principle that I learned from another giant in my life, former Philippine Society of Economic President, Dr. Alvin Ang. And we did even a workshop for business people during this pandemic. I love the words he used. Sabi niya, we need to learn to repurpose assets. What does that mean? So as simple as, meron ba kayong mga bagay na pwedeng ibenta? Are there things in your household or in your space that you can now just sell, so that will give you added cash? That's one repurposing. The other could be, are there things that you have that you can now use differently? For example, there was a boutique owner of some hotel chains or hotel accommodations, and what they did was, because the pandemic initially shut them down, they changed their model, and they said, why don't we make this a center for quarantine, or even health checks, right, for people who are needing to do that treatment. So that became a way to repurpose that asset. So are there assets that you can use that can generate a new source of income creatively because it's no longer usable through the crisis, whatever that is? And the third way to repurpose asset is to actually look at you. You, me, we are assets, right? And we, as especially those that are income earners, breadwinners that are listening to this, are there ways to repurpose yourself? Are there ways to learn new skills? Develop these things so that you might be able to now apply that directly to your current work or to have added income streams, right? So you might, I know people who took up English tutorials. They went online as an extra sideline. So as they repurposed themselves, learned, took a couple courses, were able to now do these things. There's so many different options that you might see online. They were able to, as they repurposed themselves as an asset, they added to their active source of income. Active source is an income stream which you get when you have to put work. So you need to make the calls, you need to coach and tutor kids or adults in the area of English learning. That is an active source. You might also want to look at passive sources, and that's part of the thrust of this webinar as a whole. And I want to insert that here. What are passive income streams? These are streams where even if you're not actively doing something, it makes money for you. How do you do that? Well, I'm going to show you in a couple of slides the world of investing. As we looked at this pandemic, we've looked at, and I've seen myself and I've experienced, and I put money also behind a whole host of new investment opportunities because as the pandemic rocked the world, they also realized that there are more people who, more than ever, are looking for ways to make sure their money works hard for them and make sure and finds ways to make it work hard, even if they're not actually doing the work. And how do you do that? Again, through income streams or by being able to get involved in businesses where you have good people who can continue doing the work for you with little time on your end. That's also another way to develop a semi-passive income stream. So those would be examples, right? So find out what suits you, what makes sense, but you want to have that thinking process now. I need to have increased cash sources or increased sources of income so that I can bolster my cash. So I have things, more money to be able to use at a time like this. And this would be a good way to do it. Cash out would be all about how can I cut expenses? For example, I want you to look at your budgets that we kind of looked at earlier, the 15 to 20%. And from the 15, 20 wants and needs, look at the big ticket items. And that will be your first level of cutting. If you want to boost more cash, then there's really only two things, right? You have more income streams or you cut your expenses. So you can cut the big ticket items. For example, do you really need to keep doing the groceries in the grocery store? Or like some people, including ourselves, you can now start doing palengke, obviously where the protocols allow and it's safe, save on costs. And then you keep looking at other items on your budget sheet. Can you look at things like, rentals, house expense? Some people that we know started to downsize at this time and it became a permanent downsize because they realized they don't really need to live the way they did before. And that downsizing brought down the rental costs. Some people are able to even save on amortizations as they sold and got something smaller. So all of those added costs that are significant were minimized. That's a good first layer of cutting. You might also want to look at education. So as mentioned by Patricia earlier, I'm in the homeschooling space, which is a lot more cost effective than a regular school. Our homeschool program exploded during this pandemic. So many people saw it as an option, not only to save money, which is a good cut in the education expense, but also to do two things. One is to help work with people who understand the learning from home space already. That's what they were saying to us. Many schools were trying to pivot and shift to a home-based learning approach, but their tuition was the same and some people were still kind of working through it. So the parents came to us and said, since you guys have been doing this, maybe you have advice on how to do it better because you've been doing it for close to 2 decades already. So we were very eager to welcome them in and serve them and also take advantage of the bonding time. One of the powerful things about the pandemic, for those who've seen it like that, and those that have homeschooled in its full sense of the word, right, have seen the power of being together as a family, which is not always available outside because people are busy. So cut in the education space, cut these things. You might also want to look at cutting things like utilities like water. One thing we also did to the pandemic, instead of ordering water outside where the reality is with a pandemic, you start asking all of these questions on sources, et cetera, we just bought a purifier. That saved us money. and it's quicker. If we need water, we just get it from our source. So those are just examples. I want to get you guys thinking through that. And it can be even as small as looking at money mosquitoes. So you're looking at the big expenses and you're working your way down and saying, meron pa ba? Are there other things that I'm spending on? Maybe even very small things, 20 pesos here, 30 pesos there, 100 pesos here, 400 pesos, that when you all add them up, they actually have a big dent on your expenses. For example, you might want to look at transfer fees in banks and how you do that, right? So some people, and I was like this at the start, I would transfer here, transfer there, give to this charity, give to there. And each time I transfer back, depending on which platform you use, there's a transfer fee. So instead of doing it individually, I will just consolidate it and say, I'll give all in one go so that I save on those transfer fees, or I will look for a different platform, which I was able to do, and I save on the transfer fees, right? So those are the small things that can add up. You also might want to look at things like investigating your billing statements, because there's a little bit more time to look at money because you're trying to make it work for you during the pandemic. You see things like what happened to me in the past. One of my kids had an iPad subscription, and when I looked at the bill, we were charged for 3-4 months 450 pesos for a ringtone for iPad. How in the world did that get there? It's a good thing I checked, I canceled, and I wasn't able to get back the past money, but moving forward, I saved that. So check your bills and check for some things like your subscriptions. My wife, God bless her, I love her, and my kids, but they've subscribed to all these apps and things that through the pandemic, I realized these are so useless. 150 here, 250 there, 300 here, those things all add up. So once again, this is just an example of how to think through the process and say, how can I find these mosquitoes? What are they so I can cut them? And as I reduce these expenses, I will have more cash. And as you look at this formula here, with increased cash and lower expenses, you will obviously have a nice smiling face. So that's ensuring good liquidity. Let me pick up the pace. Marami pong pwede pag-usapan. There's a lot of stuff. As I said, we're looking at how we can now have our personal economy, right? That's the second thing we're looking at. And as we look at the personal economy, I've shared with you how to make sure we have a healthy budget, how to make sure we boost liquidity. And now this will go by very quickly. You also want, if you want financial wellness, you need to have relational wellness. And one of the things we've seen in the family advocacy space as we work with couples is one of the top 2 reasons that couples end up in divorce or breakups is because of, you guessed it, either infidelity or, as you're seeing on your screen here, money. So let's talk about that very quickly. Part of my tip for people who have families on this call right now and are in marriages, to prevent issues in marriage in general, you want to ask, what are our roles? Parang hindi pinag-usapan yan. As husband and wife, you get married, you're in love, you just go through the motions, right? But we've learned you need to talk about this, just like any good business or any good company. Imagine if all these employees joined the company and said, oh, bahala ka na. Ikaw gawin mo to, ako gawin to. And you kind of go about your way. It'll create chaos. So you need to say, okay, wait. Sino bang CEO? Sino bang boss? Who will do this? Who will do that? Same thing in marriage. If you haven't done this yet, set up the roles. Because once you do the roles, it will also allow for the money management and the roles to also be smoother. I don't have enough time to unpack all of this. I'm going to go through it very quickly. I would suggest our family, the way I structure it is I use like corporate jargon, C-levels. Who is the CEO? This is the person who will make the final call, right? Siya yung mananagot. He's the one or she's the one ultimately accountable for anything related to money. In our family, my wife and I, we've chosen that I be the CEO, right? So I'm ultimately accountable for anything that has to do with money. I'm the one that is responsible for making sure that these decisions are on me. The COO manages the day-to-day, no? So paying the bills, kung meron kayong kasambahay, paying the kasambahay, making sure the grocery bills are paid for, even doing that. So managing the whole managing the operations the whole in general. Who is that? My wife is our COO, and then there is the CFO. Yeah. The CFO manages the money of the whole family. So in our case, when we first got married, I was the CEO and the CFO. So I handled that just because, my wife, God bless her, she was honest enough to say, honey, you know what? I don't want to have anything to do with money matters. You be in charge. So I said, okay. And I was very comfortable with money kasi po ako ay isang Ilocano. And meron po akong Chinese blood. So I like holding on to money. So I was the CFO at the start, but we started very simply. And as we grew from our very simple start, I would take public on some days, mag-FX ako and MRT to go to my work. And we had a second-hand car na tinatago po namin dun sa condo na pinahiram sa amin. And we would hide it in a parking spot that was elevated so that in the morning, kaya i-jump start. And in days that it didn't work, or in days that my wife had to use that, I would, as I mentioned, take. We started very simply. But as God blessed us and our lives changed and become more complex, and as my wife, so as I was the CFO, what's important is you need to give the other spouse what's called a fun fund. So money that they can use para walang problema. You can chat that in the box if you want with me. Fun fund. Ayan. Masaya yan. So they can do whatever they want. Fun fund. So we allocated an amount. Since I was the CFO, I said, honey, this is your fun fund. Do whatever you want. And she enjoyed it and she used it. I also gave her the budget that she would use in managing the home. And as she handled it very well, and as I mentioned, our finances got more complex, life changed, we got more income streams, I promoted my wife. She became the CFO. Yan. So as she was the COO, she became the CFO, and I now have my own fun fund, and I have a lot of fun with it, and it prevents issues. Kasi kung walang fun fund, it's awkward. Hihingi ka ng pera para, halimbawa, my wife will say, gusto ko pumunta sa spa, pwede ba humingi ng pera? It becomes very awkward and taxing, and so many things can happen. So I suggest set that up, and as you do that, then things can go smoother because there's a fun fund. Decide what obviously makes sense for you guys. So that happened to me. As she now became the CFO, I now had my fun funds, and because of that complexity in our finances, we then moved. I now created a role where I was also now the CIO, the Chief Investment Officer. And the Chief Investment Officer looks at the money and says, where do we put it towards our kids' college? I have 6 children, believe it or not, all from the same mother and father. My eldest is 18, my youngest is 2, my 18-year-old is going off to college in the US. So you can imagine I've had to create all these plans for my kids, and that's what a good CIO does. Now, I'm sharing this because it's a template. You want to ask in your family, whatever your culture is, generally the same thinking process. Who will be the ultimate accountable person for the financial outcome of the family? CEO. Who will manage the day-to-day? COO. Who will handle the money for everybody, all in and out, make sure they oversee that? That's a CFO. And then who is the person looking towards the future goals? Where will you invest? That is your CIO. So have those roles in place so there's less tension. And in our family, as these things change for us, what really touched my heart is when my wife said to me, but honey, I'm also the CEO. Sabi ko, really? Why? And she said, before I say what she said, I want to share you the context. There was a time when we were starting out, I was really, really struggling when I was corporate, because there would be days I would be up late. And to be honest with you, there would be times I'd be teary-eyed because I was so stressed about deliverables of the workspace and making sure that our family had enough money. So when I would come home some nights during planning season about 2, 3 a.m., ubus na ako and have to get up at 6. My wife would wake up a little bit because I would go to bed, and she would turn around and she would hold my arm and say to me, honey, I'm so blessed that you're working so hard. Thank you for doing what you do for your family. Wow, you know what? For me, that made my day. So if you are with your spouse right now and that person is the one who is working hard for you, you need to tell them that I am so blessed and encouraged by you. So she said, I am the CEO also because she is my Chief Encouragement Officer. Wow, isn't that awesome? So that's what I encourage you to also feed into your marriage. Encourage each other. Now, I don't have time to talk about the images you're seeing here. Basically, I'm encouraging whoever is the CEO, the responsible thing to do is make sure that you have all the affairs in order. So I have an orange digital file where I keep all of our affairs. And in that file is a letter. I want it to be tender. I learned this from another giant on the show. It's called a love letter. And you can work with, if you have tax lawyers and your own estate planners, you can make that part of your will also. Or that could be the will. I write a letter to my family, and it says there, to my dear wife and children, if you're reading this, then God has called me home. But because I love you, I want to let you know that I put the affairs in order. So here are the titles, here are the insurance, here's the people to talk to and contact when these things happen. I also, of course, as a responsible husband and father, I made sure that our family has coverage, which is the main business of our wonderful host for this webinar, right? HMO. I made sure I have that. So here are the people to contact, here are the people to look for. So all of that is in my love letter in that orange USB, and in the orange box that you're seeing. Of course, it's a much bigger box than what you're seeing there, but that's where all the files are now sorted out so that it matches what's in the digital file. So I encourage whoever is the CEO in your home to have that system in place, because a good CEO will make sure that the company outlives him, right? Or the family and their needs will continue to outlast even us as we pass away, because it will happen at some point. So I hope this has been healthy. Make sure that as you look at your personal economy, set healthy money roles. Ayan. So also, and this is something I'll go by very quickly. If you've never done this, make sure you have clear goals. What are clear goals? Ayan. So you want to look at your life stages, whether you're young or you're starting a business or you're starting your family or you're going to retirement or you're already retired. And along that path, ano ba yung big money goals mo? Business ba? Wedding fund, education fund, home, retirement. And as you now clarify those goals, what's very important is as you do this for yourself, wherever you are and into the future, as far as you can, what are these big money goals? You want to now remember this. A goal without a plan is just a dream, is just a wish. So can you put that in the chat box? A goal without a plan is just a dream. Pangarap lang. Yeah. So we don't want it to just be a wish or a dream. You need to be able to have a plan. So here's a template that you guys can use to achieve goals. I'm going to give you 6 questions that you can ask. And when you answer them, it will help give you a plan for each of your financial goals, so that it doesn't just remain a dream. For example, first 3 questions. What is the goal? For example, retirement. When do you need it? For example, you're 30 years old while you're listening to this. At ang gusto mo is 20 years from now, pag 50 years old, retired na. So it's in 20 years. How much will you need? So for example, the same example earlier, 100,000 a month is your income. So you want to have that much money still when you retire to cover your lifestyle. So 100,000 times 12 months to have a whole year, and that's how much you will need for a year. And then you multiply by 80%. Bakit may 80%? 80% is a factor because when we retire, in general, we expect people to lower their lifestyle and spending because they're slowing down. They want to just relax and enjoy, but they still want to have money. So 80% is a general factor as financial planners we put in. That leaves you close to 1 million, right? So if this is you, in this case, the person needs close to 1 million pesos every year. Passive income, they're not working actively anymore, that they get for retirement. But Edric, what about inflation? Diba? Yung cost of electricity, gasoline, goods, they all go up because of inflation. So 20 years from now, let's inflate that value. It's not 960,000. It's more like 2.1 million using inflation of about 3 to 4%, which is about conservative, given that we're doing about 4.5 right now, 4-ish for the Philippine economy. So that's the future value. So here's the main question. If I want to achieve this goal, I need to have retirement money close to 2.1 million every year without me working. What do I do, Edric? Here's what you can do. You need to now say, okay, I need to save and invest so that over 20 years, I will be able to arrive at the value you see on your screens, right? That's about 26 million. Let me just fix this. I'm seeing a weird box in my screen right now. Okay, there you go. There you go. All right. So that's what you do. You want to be able to say, okay, I need 26 million pesos. I need to save up that amount over 20 years. And I'm able, that will help me achieve my goal, because at the time that I retire 20 years from now, with the 26 million pesos, I will now put it in a passive income stream or an investment. And when I put it in that investment or fund, it makes 8%. This is just an assumption. It will now be able to give me the 2.1 million pesos every year that I need. Yeah. So this is a template. Once again, working on your personal economy, looking at how to achieve goals. This is a way to do it. Now you look at 3 more questions. So that's my goal, 26 million in 20 years so that I can retire with 2.1 million pesos. I need to ask, well, how much can I set aside ngayon? How much can I set aside now? What return do I need? And then look at the investment options. So let's say you did the 20% guide that I gave you earlier. You have 20,000 to set aside towards your future goals. You can put it behind your retirement. How much would you need it to earn? If this is you, you will need it to earn 16%, which is quite high. So you might want to look at maybe equity funds because those are higher returns and it's riskier, but over a long period of time, like 20 years, it is a risk worth taking because if you have more time in the market, you can take in more risk as a general investing rule, right? Or you can set up a business, right? With the business, you have greater returns, possibly, of course, depending on the risk involved. So those would be the things to consider as you map out those plans. So I hope this is helpful. Now, as one very quick slide, I'm not going to go through this in detail. I just want to show it to you guys because I'm running out of time. I'm really here to help, but I realize there's so much to say. So you can just take a quick photo. Here are options for investments in general that are available in the Philippines and how to frame it. Do you want something that's like cash, less risky, more liquid, easier to access? Or do you want something that's ownership that might have more risks? So L is low risk, M is medium risk, H is high risk. So you can choose from there. And if you've never invested or if you're just starting, my suggestion as a financial planner is you want to try out pooled funds first. Ito po yung mga mutual funds, UITFs, because they're safe, they're backed by very reputable banks and firms, and there is a fund manager who's managing the fund in a way that if it makes money, the fund manager makes money. So obviously they'll want it to make money, and if it does, you make money as well. So you can look at these websites. They are free, Philippine Investment Funds Association or UITF, and then you pick and choose the investment that makes sense for your goal. Earlier, the example was 16%. So you can see alin ba dito ang 16% per year. And then you now choose that goal based on what you're comfortable with. Do you trust the company? Do you like the fund? Do you understand it? Make sure you understand it. Last, as a free plug, I am one of the ambassadors for this amazing platform right now, G Invest. So easy to invest. You just get your phone, Gcash, link it, and it's literally just a few clicks. You can invest in stocks like Amazon in the US or Apple, right? It's an amazing tool that really makes it easy to get in. There's a lot less paperwork and bureaucracy. So check that out. My kids are in it. Our helpers are in it. I'm in it. People I know, it's an option if you guys want that as well. But as a disclaimer, again, I am one of the endorsed ambassadors for that. So please make sure you understand it before you get into it. All right. So let me close the personal economy with this. I have a question for you. Can you please chat in the box with me? Which of these things do you think is the best predictor of happiness? IQ, grade point average, self-control, openness to new ideas, or friendliness? Ready? Go. Go, guys. Yeah, tingnan natin. Ano yung mga sagot ninyo? Tingnan natin. I will check it on the box. Let's see what you guys answer here. Ayan, C, D, good. Openness to new ideas, great. Openness to new ideas, ganda. Self-control, friendliness, IQ, grade point average. The correct answer is, based on this survey, believe it or not, the best predictor of happiness by some researchers as featured in Larry Sacks's book, The Collapse of Parenting, is actually self-control. And when I got to speak to Henry C. Jr., right, in this family that's one of the most wealthy, was the wealthiest individual, and it's now been spread because of his passing, God bless their family. Henry C. Jr., when I was still on the show, I asked if I could guess his dad. I said, I'd love to interview the richest man in the country because I've interviewed a lot of amazing people as giants. And he said, my dad's kind of sickly, doesn't really want to be on TV. I'm like, that's great. What about you? And he's like, well, I don't really like being on TV too much. I said, okay. Can you please tell me, in your view or in your learning, because I like learning. I said, can you please tell me the most important thing you learned about money from your dad, who is the richest man in our country? So he laughed a little bit and he looked at me and he goes, are you sure you want to know? I'm like, yes. And he's like, are you sure? I'm like, yes. And he said this. He said, here's the most important thing I learned from my dad about money. Don't spend your money. And I started laughing. I said, ha, ha, ha. And I was like, wait, oh, nga, no? just because you have money doesn't mean you have to spend it. What is that reminding us of? Self-control. So that's my last reminder. When you look at your personal economy, on top of the things that I've shared already here, managing the relationships and the roles, looking at your liquidity, looking at making sure that you have a healthy budget, please ask yourself, how are you? How am I in the area of self-control? Because not only will it allow us to avoid pains in money, but as you see, even in this data, it allows you to be happy. So let's move on and wind down. This will go by very quickly. We've looked at W, we've looked at E, let's now look at L. Look after your health. Did you know that the National Bureau of Economic Research recently, only in 2017, it was revised in 2018, they did a study, the lifetime cost of bad health. Nagulat po ako, I was shocked. Number one, did you know that if you compare a typical senior citizen now, 65 years old, who did not finish college, because college master's degrees can change incomes radically, right? So just a high school degree holder in the US, nakatapos ng high school, 65 years old, but had poor health. Nakatapos ng high school lang, only high school, 65 years old, but had good health. The amount of money that the guy with good health was able to obtain was almost double the person who had bad health. So what are we learning? It really is true. Health is wealth. Health leads to wealth, actually. And it's powerful. You look at other statistics. In the same study, they showed us here are the 4 reasons why a person that does not have good health affects their financial capability. Number 1, if your health is poor, you're not going to be able to make as much money because you can't be as productive, right? That's ability. Number 2, even employers will see that you're not as productive and there are not many roles I can give to you because of your health, and therefore the opportunities are also less. Number 3, your lifespan, because you are unhealthy, or if a person is unhealthy, they do not have a longer lifespan, and that decreases their opportunity to earn more and save more. That should be pretty straightforward. Finally, the medical expenses. The more sickly or unhealthy you are, the more unplanned expenses are present, and as a result, bad financial outcomes. That is why it's so important to guard our health. I remember what one of these health coaches said at a talk I gave live about 5 or 6 years ago. When I was with him, we were talking about overall wellness. He said, everything we do operates out of our body. Can you put that in the chat box? Everything we do operates out of our body. So that's how important it is to guard our health and how this will clearly impact our finances. Now, I want you to take a look at this diagram. Very interesting. In this diagram, I learned from another guy. He talked to me about the principle of 5 types of people. Ang sabi niya, there's type 1. This person does not have money, has some time, and has good health. For example, a student, right? So a student starting out doesn't have a lot of money because they're a student, but they have time, right? They're more flexible and they have good health. The second type of person is somebody who doesn't have money, doesn't have time, the health is still okay. And an example of this would be someone who's maybe growing in the ranks, right? Let me just, sorry, I'm going to just fix my screen because I'm not seeing the slides that clearly here. Right, okay. So, okay. So type 1, as we saw here, right? You're seeing that. Student, the second example would be no money, no time, good health. I am starting my career. So I'm bugbog. So I'm really pushing hard. I'm hustling hard. No money, no time, but my health is still good. And then type 3. So the student starts a career, and as they're hustling, oh, maybe their money situation is changing, right? Now they don't have time, and their health, questionable, right? They're not sure. Some people are already starting to see the signs because they're pushing so hard. This is midway. And then for many people, or for most who have hustled this hard, who have achieved a good level of money, they now have time because they're done. They built their empires or whatever. Unfortunately, their health is shot. And they're retiring into their life, but they don't know how many years they've had. And some people, unfortunately, even through this pandemic, their lives have been taken because the health had been compromised as they put so much time and money behind the work and did not balance their lives too well. So what we want to aspire for really is type 5. Somebody who, after putting their time and money behind working hard, etc., they actually still have money, they have time, they're flexible, and their health is good. That is our hashtag goal, type 5. How do we become this person as we look at our health? First, as we mentioned, you want to look for more and more ways to have your money work hard for you, even if you're not working as hard, right? You're not putting in the time and energy. You want to be able to do that to augment and eventually outdo your passive or your active income sources. If you've heard even of principles of Robert Kiyosaki, right, where he talks about this in his cash flow quadrant principle. So you want to be able to say, ask yourself right now, am I putting too much time and energy behind the work that it's compromising my health? It's unhealthy. And I might be able to achieve, or I'm achieving a good level of wealth, but it's gonna take its toll. So please rethink that. And I love this point. You also want to protect your health, obviously, as you go through a good lifestyle and making sure you have HMO coverage, which is what, once again, Maxicare is able to provide, right? So think about these things. The final thing I want to do, and I don't have time to go through this in detail, but if you want to make sure that you are a type 5 person, there's deep fulfillment in what you're doing. You have the money, you have the flexibility, and your health is good. You want to find ikigai. Ikigai is like reason for being. It's a Japanese construct that basically intersects 4 things: your passion, your skill, your economic engine, and the world's greatest need. The intersection of all that, pursue that with all of your being, because that is what will allow you to experience a very well-balanced, if you will, and fulfilling life, where you have the money that you need, you have the time that you need, and the health is also there as well. Yeah. So I hope that that's helpful. What have we looked at? We looked at working on our giants. We scratched that off. We looked at establishing our personal economy. We looked at looking at our protect our health. And then finally, as I wrap up, WELL. Can you all chat this in the box with me? Let go. Why am I talking about letting go? You know, again, I do not know all of you that are on this call. I do not know where you are in your life, even financially or health-wise. But one thing I do know, in my own experience and in the lives of people that I deeply respect, the giants in my life, in the area of money, one thing that maybe we have not yet been able to do, that could be the source of the stress that we're undergoing right now, and could be the reason for the poor health that we're undergoing right now because of that stress, is in the area of money. Maybe just like me, at a certain point, I was grabbing, trying to take as much as I can because I thought that's what defines success. Make as much money as you can, whatever it takes. And I was stressed. I went into debt and I almost lost everything. I was broken, and it's a whole other story all of its own. And so as I rebounded from that old crisis in my life, this is why I'm so passionate about personal finance. This is why I want to see it change you and change your family, and even my life to continue to change me, is because of this powerful lesson in the area of letting go. Could it be that the reason you're stressed is because you are grabbing and there's no more room for God to actually do what he wants to do in your life in the area of money? Let go. I love this line of Martin Luther. He said, I have held many things in my hands and I have lost them all. But whatever I have placed in God's hands, that I still possess. Friends, wherever you are, this may be the main thing you need to take home and take away. Are you hanging on too tightly? Are you too stressed? Maybe it's time to let go and say, okay, God, you show me what you want me to do with your stuff, and you watch what he does. So thank you, everybody. Once again, what is our main message? Be well. WELL. Put that in the chat box one more time. Be well. Thank you, everybody. Be well. I'm going to turn you now over back to our hosts. It's been a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to the questions you guys might have for me. God bless you.
Thanks so much, Edric. What a wonderful, powerful talk. And it's really packed with such amazing insight. In fact, there's a lot of great questions here. And I wanted to start with this one, a little soft, but you did start with talking about standing on the shoulder of giants. So someone just asked, what books or authors would you recommend that are must reads? Because they also want to of course, expose themselves to great information and stand on the shoulders of those types of giants?
Well, I happen to be in my study, so let me get some books.
Oh, sure. See, guys, this is what you get when you want to live your best life. We get to stand on the shoulder of Edric right now, who can
So,
be our giant and give us relief, point
very
us to
good
the right
books here,
direction.
guys.
And it's
There's one
he,
more here.
as
All
he's
right.
finding his books,
So
we all know that it's
here's
important
some amazing books, right?
to
So
be
stuff that I
inspired.
love, business books. So Jim Collins, Built to Last. Jim Collins, Good to Great. And one of his latest ones, Great by Choice. Jim Collins. Here's another great book, God and Money, written by a couple of Harvard guys. Really, really good stuff. Really powerful. And then this one. This really, I hate to overshare this, but this brought me to tears. Money, Possessions, and Eternity by Randy Alcorn. A couple of good things. Now, if you want things on money in the area of education, I have one book here that I highly recommend. Highly recommend it. And I
Are you
cannot
guys
find
writing it down? Are you guys able to catch all those titles?
You know what? I should have it here. I'm embarrassed, but it's a book that I authored with my wife called Why You Should Homeschool. So you can look up that book as well in the area of money and education. So those would be a couple of references that I hope help you guys.
Now, as you mentioned that why you should homeschool, as you're looking for that resource, someone actually asked about how they can find information on your homeschooling program. And I have to say to everybody, I'm a homeschooler mom, thanks to Joy and Edric. It's something that my husband and I do, not just because of the financial aspect, but because we really wanted to spend more time with our children. So Edric, why don't you tell them a little bit more about the program?
Oh yeah, I'll just give you a straight resource, homeschoolglobal.com. It's a good website that has the data that you might be able to use, so or that can give you some initial answers. So please check that out.
All right. Well, let me go to some of the comments and questions. I really love, and I just wanted to point this out to you, Edric, what Geraldine said. She just said that it's really on point. And it was at that time of your talk where I think, you were just on your second point, and these were, I think, the roles in the family. And it's really important for us to all understand what our roles are, to also be on point. So I'd like to thank you for pointing that out. Sai here actually said that everything has been really practical. This person loves it. And going back to what you said, it really all boils down to self. It's really a heart issue when it comes to money, right, Edric? It's not just about the numbers.
Yeah, for sure. As I said, Dave Ramsey. So if you want other resources, you can look up his stuff. He's a lot of good stuff. Oh, I have some up here, but I won't get it anymore. You might see my Zoom attire. Dave Ramsey, he said, as I quoted earlier, personal finance is 80% behavior and attitude, only 20% skill and head knowledge. And I totally agree with that. I mean, I've been around the country, around the world. We've talked about money, and some people change, some people don't. That's just the reality. Why? Because of behavior. They know what they need to do. They just don't do it. So yes, totally. It's a heart condition. It's making sure you're honest with yourself and saying, am I that impulsive type of person? I need to find ways to cut my spending habits because I'm so impulsive. So yes, definitely look at yourself and make sure that you change the behaviors and the attitude more than just learning stuff.
There's this person, May, who really commented on the fun, yung pang parlor, sabi niya. But honestly, that is something so unique to me, and maybe to a lot of the people who are here with us today. No one really thinks of setting aside a fun because they think that's part of the wants already, and that's really something new to many. And I think that's one of the things also, maybe particularly for the wives, that's something that really stood out to all of them. But how do you determine how much a fund should be?
Right. So you want to start with the budget ratios I gave earlier. I suggest you take the fund from your wants. So I said, you can have 20% for your wants. Use that 20% of your family budget to now say, okay, how much of this will I give to my spouse as a fund, and work at it. It's like in the area of money, what I love about it is it is very personal. So start with that kitty, if you will, and talk about it and say, okay, what works for you? And for some, it might be the whole thing. For some, it might be less. For some, it might be more. So that's where you're gonna have to work that out with your spouse. But the goal is to make sure that you're both eyes wide open. It's not like there's a lot of that you can get from anywhere. You have to take from that pie so that the family expenses as a whole do not go downhill as a result of the fund.
All right. Again, it's now into the heavier questions. There's a question here for first-time investors faced with bonds, UITFs, real estate, businesses, etc. Where would you suggest they put their savings? If one wants to start investing in securities like stocks, mutual funds, and everything, which credible institutions can help you get started? So for that two-part question.
Yeah. So the question is, who can you go to, right? That's the second one, and the first is, how do you now choose and get started? So my suggestion is, on the choice of where to invest, go through the template I gave earlier. And once you go to that template, I hope you took a screenshot of that overview. You can now go to those sites I suggested so you can match it. For example, I need money for my retirement. Here's how much I can set aside. I need a 16% return. I now go to those sites, either the PIFA site or the UITF. It will show you a whole list of the different funds. And then you can now say, this is the fund that matches my 16%, for example. That would be a way to go about it. And if you've never done it before, I like, once again, pooled funds, because pooled funds allow for several things that are very basic in investing. For example, you know the expression, do not put all your eggs in one basket. When you put your money in a pooled fund, such as, I'll just throw a pooled fund like what's called a growth fund. Growth funds would be offered by companies where they get a little bit of bonds and a little bit of stocks, and they put it together so that you now have your investment not just in one egg. It's in a bond, it's in a stock, and it's not just one stock or one bond. It's in several types of stocks, several types of bonds. That's why I like pooled funds. I like to say pooled funds would be good training wheels for people starting in investing. The problem with going direct to investing, like in stocks or other options, is if you don't know much about that investment, then it might be more detrimental. But with a pooled fund, because there's a fund manager already, that fund manager who knows the investment landscape, whose goal is to make sure it grows, because as it grows, they will earn. They will be the ones to now make sure that your fund will keep growing. So that's, again, a couple of reasons why I like that. And finally, very important, and Patricia knows this because in the fundamentals show that I anchor, we talked about scams.
Yes.
Always investigate before you invest. When you look at pooled funds, it's very easy to understand. It's like, for example, Patricia and I are going to be saying, you know what, we like this friend of ours business. So we will gather our money and we will give it to him so that it now goes to his business, because we know that our friend will be able to grow it in his business will do well, and we all make money. That's a pooled fund. We get it together, give it to someone who will now make it work. So that's why I like those options. And a final detail on this. The good thing about pooled funds is you can also automate that. For the impulsive spenders here, depending on your bank and where you bank, so you might be an employed person and you have a payroll account somewhere, you can actually start there. Go to that bank, ask them about their UITFs or their mutual funds, look for the one that might fit your goal, and ask them to connect it to your account so that every month it automatically takes from your account and you're not tempted to touch it. Yeah. So again, quite a bit to say, but I hope that that is helpful.
I'm sure it will be. Now, a lot of people are also asking between banking and investing. One question is that how do you achieve a good balance between traditionally saving in banks and actually investing?
Right. So my suggestion is you only save in banks, and I want to be very specific here, checkings or savings accounts, right? You only want to save money there for two reasons. Number one, if you're putting the money there for your operating expenses. So for example, your salary goes to that payroll checking account. You keep the money there so that you can use it to pay for your bills, et cetera, right? As the CFO would do, right? So that's one. The other purpose of a checking or savings account is now for emergency funding. And I didn't unpack that in this webinar because it's pretty common, and I've shared this in a previous Maxicare webinar. The emergency fund is something you need to access quickly for emergencies. That's what a good checking or savings account can do. Isang ATM lang or over the counter, you're able to get the money quickly for the emergency. That's the purpose of the checking and savings account in the bank, because it only gives you 0.25% per annum. My suggestion is, after you have that money set aside for your emergency fund and your operating expenses in that account, don't put the extra money there. You now want to put that towards investing towards the goals that you need for yourself or your family. And you can choose from that option sheet that I gave you guys earlier.
And I guess that answers the question of an anonymous attendee here, but he did say that ever since the percentage rate or the percent rate from banks has been lower than ever, is it a wise decision to transfer all emergency fund to money markets instead? Or should I do a 20% bank, 80% money market? You would probably reverse that.
Yeah, you can do money markets right now. So money markets are doing maybe 1 to 2%. But here's an extra tip. Many of these new digital bank experiences, digital platforms, including, and I'll say with a disclaimer, right? Because I'm endorsing them, GCash, they have banks that offer up to 4% per annum for deposits up to certain amounts. I would suggest, where you can, and it makes sense for you, obviously study it, put part of your emergency funds there also, because even while it's parked, it makes much more than just 0.25, or even some of the money markets, 1 to 2%. And money markets are also funds. So the access to that fund will be a little bit harder than if you just went to those online bank options, right? Like the one I mentioned, CIMB, which is connected to GCash. So those would be good options for you if you're looking for where else to put your emergency.
All right, but since pandemic mode pa ang Philippines, and this is the question here, can you quantify the risk now involved if this person invests in mutual funds during this time of pandemic?
Yeah, so any investment that you make, whether it's now in the pandemic or outside of the pandemic, as I mentioned, there will always be a crisis, right? There will always be something. The beauty of the template that I gave. So even if I disclose that I am an endorser of GCash, as a financial planner, we don't sell anything, right? I don't sell investments or insurance. So I just help people think through the process. And the thinking process I gave earlier will help you ensure that whether the markets or the economy goes up or down, in general, you can have peace of mind. What do I mean? If you're able to say, my goal is 5 years, I need to be able to get this, and you've mapped that out, you can now work with whichever options that I gave earlier, on mutual funds, etc. And as you work with them, when you match that fund, they're designed to be able to ride out the different movements in this economy or others, the volatility, if you will, in technical terms, right? So the key is to make sure that you match your goal, as I mapped out earlier, to the investment. Don't just invest. The people that will be stressed about investing through times like this will be those that are going into it because a friend said, uy, pasok ka dahil okay daw, bumaba yung presyo, it's time to jump into the market. You jump in, you have no idea what's happening, and then suddenly things fluctuate. You'll panic because you're like, wait, what happened? Because you didn't really work towards, here's my goal, here's how I'm going to get there. I can ride out the volatility of the market because I've matched my goal to the investment. That's so important. And when in doubt, added tip, Patricia and the viewers here, when in doubt, seek the help of a third-party planner, right? There is RFP Philippines. There's many different financial planners you can reach out to that can give you advice. Again, if they sell products, let's say they're also an insurance agent or an investment broker, they have to disclose that to you upfront so you know if they have other agenda and you can be objective. But otherwise, we want to help you think through your money planning.
That's why I'm so happy that Edric here is our friend and neighbor at that. But here,
and you listen. I'm glad that you listen to advice.
And that's important, honestly.
It's so important.
The advice that Edric is giving all of us here today, if we're not going to take it in, then how are we going to improve in our lives and have that financial wellness, right? But speaking of high volatility, you were talking about this earlier. It's interesting that someone is asking about whether it is, in your opinion, a good time to invest in precious metals like gold, given the high volatility of the stock market.
right? So, maybe a specific answer to the question of what are specific investments that make sense given the timing. You can Google these forecasts, and you can go look at trends also. Clearly, it makes sense to put investments behind things that have to do with the upsides of this pandemic. For example, if you're going to go into stock investing and you really want to study that and go directly there, or maybe you're already in that space and you're investing there, you want to go into items that are able to benefit from this pandemic. I don't want to put those words together, but those that have been helpful in the pandemic, things that have to do with um, uh, you're looking at healthcare, you're looking at even infrastructure. Many different infrastructure projects have been able to carry out now because of the fact that people aren't using many of these roads. We've heard of many even facilities, right? So look at those businesses, those asset classes that actually have been able to help out, if you will, during this pandemic, and therefore they've had monetary gains. Those would be ways to ride this out, or that would be a good way to put money. So when you asked about even currencies and things like that, my view on other investment assets, once again, is make sure you understand it before you get into it. That's my general thought. I don't have enough time to go blow by blow on each one, but that would be my general thought on top of the what areas are benefiting, are helpful in this pandemic period.
What about this question? Is an investment in real estate, combination of residential condos for recurring income and vacant lots for appreciation of value, the best and has the least risk? As you were going through all of those lists earlier, can you just go back to this and advise this person?
Yeah, sure. So real estate is always a good investment if it's in a good location. Obviously, it's one of those assets that will continue to appreciate in a good location. So that would be key. But the downside of real estate is the money needed to get started in it, right? So for those that have the cash, it is also a good time to buy, depending on locations. Now, obviously, some places are more strategic than others. So I would make sure you look at the location and what's happening around it. There have been changes also in some of these infrastructure projects as a result of the pandemic. So just make sure you are aware. That would be my general thought on real estate.
All right, Edric, we do have a lot of other questions, but that's the only time we have now. But I do still have time for your final message.
Sure. I want to end the same way I ended my talk portion. When I look at the area of money, we have to remember that money is just a means of exchange. It's not really the end all, but it can cause a lot of stress, and it can affect a lot of our wellness, right? Our well-being. And maybe, as I presented earlier, it could be that what is deeply driving our stress and maybe the crisis that we're experiencing right now in the area of money and health will be that we're not letting go. You're grabbing on too tightly, or you're not placing it in the hands of the true owner. And so I want to remind you once again, let go, give it to God, and watch Him do what He does best as you now ask Him what He wants you to do with His money. So I hope that that's helpful. Thanks again for having me, guys. God bless you. Be well. Can you chat that one more time? Be well.
And as he asks you to chat that, and that's our hope for all of you, to be well. Thank you so much, Edric. I'm sure that everyone, myself included, honestly, I have a lot of notes coming from my Maxicare notebook, by the way, a lot of notes from your talk. Thank you so much. We all feel blessed. And I'm sure that you do too, because you reserved the slot for this, and now you can share everything that you learned. And when you do that, please make sure that you guys also use the hashtags like live your best life, because having sound financial health really will allow us to live our best lives. That was a wonderful financial wellness talk by Edric Mendoza. Thanks so much for all of your questions. You guys were so engaged all throughout, and we really appreciate it. Thank you so much for participating. Now, before we announce the winners of the activities earlier, we would like to know how you liked today's session with Edric by answering a survey form. Now, the link to this form will be given to you via the chat box right now, so please do check the chat box. Now, apart from that, please be reminded that aside from Edric's feedback form, Maxicare will also be sending their survey form for this event, where you can win prizes just for participating. And I'll have more on that a little later. For those who participated in our musical activity earlier, I'm sure you guys are ready to find out if you are one of the three winners who will get to win bookie vouchers for a premium account. And since we're talking about financial, right? Get this, with your bookie premium account, you can get a lot of free food and great service using that account. Isn't that amazing? Here are the ones who were the first to get the correct answers. Please flash them on the screen right now. Congratulations to Charlene Jane San Juan, Paula Jane Valles, and Michelle Mercado. Great job, ladies. Congratulations and enjoy your bookie voucher premium account. Now, please provide your name, your full name, if that isn't the full name yet, your contact number and your email address on the chat box to the panelists so that the Maxicare team can talk to you about how you can claim your prizes. Congratulations. For those who didn't win during our icebreaker game, don't worry about it, guys. And we just like to remind everyone that you can still win exciting prizes just by answering a survey that will be sent after this event. We will have 5 lucky participants who will win a Maxicare bamboo cheese board and cutlery set. The survey link will be sent through an email on Tuesday, June 22, and by June 28. So make sure you guys answer before June 28, because by June 28, the winners will be selected and then contacted by Maxicare for the delivery of their prizes. Now, before you guys go, here are some real quick poll questions. Just click on the answer that best suits you, and we just want to know what you guys are thinking. Here's my first question. Now that you have great and new knowledge about financial wellness, are you ready to make the needed steps, right? Action to live your best life? Yes or no? Are you ready? I mean, if you're not ready, we can do this again. I'm just kidding. But we hope that you guys really enjoyed today's session. That was a wonderful discussion led by Edric. And 100%, this is the first time I think that we had 100%. Of course, all of us want to live our best life. And I'm glad that you guys have the confidence to do just that because of this event. Here is our second question. Which among the money matters that you learned today is your favorite? How to create plans in achieving your goals? Setting healthy money goals, mga CEOs, CFOs, CIO, COO, or looking after your health to achieve financial wellness. Which one would I pick? I really like the last one also. I like that, what Edric said. I'm going to go back to my notes. It's 2 times more. And a lot of you also feel the same. You have to look after your health to achieve financial wellness. Good job, guys. We see eye to eye. And here is the last one. Which topics or activities would you like to see in our next Maxilife Maxicare Wellbeing webinar series? Say that again 5 times with me. But instead, answer this poll. Is it proper nutrition, mental health, taking care of your eyesight? Oh, this is so important. And of course, COVID-19 immunization. Let us know what topics would you guys like for us to take on in our next Maxicare Maxilife Wellbeing webinar series. Thanks so much for your time, for answering these poll questions. And survey says that a lot of you really want to know more about mental health. And and right under that, we also want to learn more about proper nutrition. And we hear you. Thank you so much. Now, if you guys enjoyed this experience, please do share what you learned and do share about your experience on your social media using the hashtags Live Your Best Life and hashtag Maxicare Maxilife webinar. And you can tag Maxicare on Facebook at Maxicare Healthcare Corp and on their IG at Maxicare Healthcare. And of course, take a look at the IG of Maxicare Health and Wellness when sharing about your wonderful takeaways from this event. And please also subscribe to their YouTube channel because I know that you will see content such as this one and so many great content that we have there. So subscribe to their YouTube channel. It's Maxicare Healthcare Corporation. Now, to learn more about Maxicare's products, please visit shop.maxicare.com.ph and share that link also to others. You can also send a message through their FB Messenger. If you have questions about this webinar series, you may email maxicare.webinar@maxicare.com.ph. See you guys at the next event. Yes. The next event will be on July 16 at 5 p.m. And this will be about COVID-19 immunization updates. But yes, we do hear your opinion on how you want to learn more about those topics that you selected during our poll. But that ends our event for today. Thank you so much for being here with us this evening. We hope you enjoyed. And of course, you were able to take away meaningful information like I did. My notebook's now full. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great day. And we know that with Maxicare, you all can live your best life. Have a great weekend.